What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys with the Dad the side. And Tad, Combine weekend has now come and gone. We have all the, recap that we're going to be covering in today's episode. But lo and behold, Tad, I mean, after the Combine weekend, next week we have free agency. So, I mean, we've already been hearing about some of the deals about some of these teams that are making some big changes to their roster as we head into 2024's league year. So, I mean, we'll cover all that in a future episode for sure. But yeah, this offseason is moving right along right after the Combine. Like, I mean, it's just run right after the other, right after the other. We just had we're recording on a Tuesday here, so we just had the franchise tag deadline already came and gone as well today. I predicted, and you're in agreement as well, but Michael Pittman Jr. got tagged by the Colts. I'm pretty sure they're going to be working on a long-term deal there. Some of the guys that we brought up as well, Brian Burns, he ended up getting tagged. Antoine Winfield Jr. ended up getting tagged. Justin Madubuike for the Baltimore Ravens, he ended up getting tagged.
Is that how you say it?
Madubuike, yeah.
Matabuke,
I believe.
Matabuke.
Not even close. But yeah, so some of the guys that we were reported to get the tag, they actually did end up getting the tag. So no surprises anywhere either. So there's no like team that came out of nowhere that's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna tag this guy. It was just like pretty much everything reported. So good research on us, buddy.
Oh yeah, I mean on us. I appreciate you sharing that. But I swear to God, if I hear the words Tony Pollard one more time, I'm going to kill someone. So many can you believe we're getting rid of Tony Pollard? Yes, I can. And yeah, so Tony Pollard's a surprise. And let's not talk about potentially the biggest, most glaring example of I just hate you move in NFL history of the Broncos are eating $85 million just to get one guy off their team.
Yeah, Russell Wilson will no longer be part of that team.
Run on that much money.
It's true. It's very true.
It's crazy. I swear to God, if he goes to Raiders, I'm going to kill someone. Because you just know those crappy Raiders-Broncos games are going to be Monday night primetime when I just need my fix after a bad Monday back to school. And I get, Russell Wilson versus who's going to be, I don't know, JJ McCarthy. Like, probably. I don't want that. Way. Who wants that?
Yeah, so like we talked about, we're going to get into all that because, there's a lot to digest with all that's been happening, not just the Russell Wilson news, not just, the tag, all that stuff, there's a lot to cover for sure. So we'll save that for a future episode for sure because there's, a ton that we could cover with that for sure. But as mentioned,
Matabuco.
Not even close again.
Damn it.
So we just had the Combine weekend. So we're going to give you guys our recap about just how the weekend went. But obviously, we've kind of brought this up before the Combine started, but Underdog Fantasy, our great partners at Underdog Fantasy, you were able to bet on 40 times. So, I mean, Tad, I know that came a little bit of a surprise to you when I sort of made that announcement, but just like, all throughout those 4 days of the position drills, whoever was running a 40, not every player, but majority, like some of the bigger name players, you're able to place a bet on whether they're going to go higher or lower than a certain time. And you could use that on the betting platform at Underdog Fantasy. Combine that with, NCAA picks, both men's and women's. You can go to MLB spring trading. You got the NBA action as well, MMA. I mean, just they got all sports covered, even when it's NFL offseason like this. So, they even got you covered like we talked about with the Combine as well. I don't doubt that maybe once the offseason hits, maybe there's going to be some, who's going to sign, Derrick Henry or whatever it is. Like, there may be like an over-under as far as like, his contract and things like that. Like, I don't doubt it because Underdog, they like to experiment like that. They want to get you in on the action with a lot of fun.
Over-under a year and a half on Derrick Henry's contract would be interesting.
I think I'd go the over.
I think I would too.
Yeah.
I think 2's the sweet spot there.
I think so. I think so. But yeah, we'll once again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We got a lot to cover with that
Yeah.
episode a little later. But yeah, definitely, use the Underdog Fantasy platform. It's really easy to get into it. You just make anywhere between 2 and 5 different prop bets. And yeah, the more bets you make, the more potential money you can win. And right now, if you use our promo code DESAI, DESAI, you can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So I mean, hypothetically, if you were to put in that full $500 on your first deposit, Underdog Fantasy will match that dollar for dollar, so you can bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. So yeah, once again, use that promo code DESAI, DESAI, and you can double up on your just deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. And Tad, they've been great sponsors of ours for a long time now. And yeah, I mean, just like we talked about, even though it's the NFL offseason, there's a lot of other things you could be betting on, even when it comes to like the NFL offseason as well. But I mean, just Tad, me and you both love this platform. And yeah, really love our partners there.
100% love Underdog Fantasy. And one of the biggest things I've said about them over the past couple, weeks, months at this point,
Yeah.
is they are very user friendly. They want to make sure you have every advantage to win your bet. And I thought that, there was no way you could become more user friendly than they are now. And lo and behold, I kind of noticed this was happening a little bit over the weekend. And then it just kind of struck me as I was driving home today. I was at a stoplight, don't worry. But I got an alert from Underdog Fantasy. And I pulled it up, and I don't know if this was geo-based or whatever, but they just go, hey, just a heads up, Jalen Brunson is out tonight. And I was like, what betting site updates you with who is out, who is not? Betting sites love that stuff of like, oh, Jalen Brunson's out. Okay, don't tell anyone. Hopefully their bet's still there. And they're the ones that are like, hey, just a heads up, you may want to pull this before it goes against you. That is so, I mean, it's honestly, because I use it as a fantasy app at this point, is I have 2 fantasy basketball leagues, one of which is going really well, one of which is going pretty poorly. But the one that's going well is they alerted me. I think it was it wasn't Paul George. Who was it? Doesn't matter. It was some big NBA star I had on my roster who was kind of like on the edge of like maybe he starts, maybe he doesn't. And Underdog actually beat ESPN to inform me, hey, this guy's not starting today. And so I switched him out for another player, and lo and behold, I won last week. So Underdog, it continues to be the most customer-friendly betting service I have ever seen in my life, and I likely will ever see in my life. So guys, again, use that promo code DESAI, that's D as in David, E, S as in Sam, AI, to get up to $500 for free on your first deposit. I really need to emphasize that point, on your first deposit. So if you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, first-time customer to Underdog Fantasy, you're about to hit a massive payday. Take it from both of us. So they are super friendly to you. They will make sure you hit at least a positive benefit from this relationship, just like we've experienced. So Underdog Fantasy, thank you so much again for partnering for us. And yeah, it's going to be a wild off season. It's going to be a wild NBA playoff season as it nears closer. And there are going to be a lot of fun bets. And let's not forget, what month are we in now?
We are in March.
I feel a little bit of madness coming on.
We are in championship week for March Madness as well. So yeah, we got Selection Sunday coming in a couple weeks as well. So yeah, it's coming around the corner for sure. So yeah, lots of things you can bet on for sure with our great partners at Underdog Fantasy. And like we talked about, you were able to bet on the Combine as well. So Tad, the Combine, as mentioned, has concluded the Combine weekend. We got a lot of great news. We saw a lot of great performances. We also saw some not so great performances as well. So Tad, I got to kick these off really quickly here. Just what were some of your surprise performances or just surprises from the NFL Combine weekend?
So I actually have a surprise non-performance for you.
Okay, yeah, that definitely happened for sure. Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about this. Caleb Williams was the surprise player. That man, and look, most of the time when people use the words like this, it's it's a hyperbole, it's a exaggeration, it's a, okay, let's all relax here for a second. This is truly a historic moment where for the first time in recorded Combine history, a player just looked at all the medical stuff he had to do, all the on-field stuff he had to do. He did do the interviews, to his credit.
He did.
And he just was like, "No, I'm all right. I'm good." So and again, I will. This is not an anti Caleb Williams thing. he did face the press, which I was impressed by, because when I first heard, oh, like he's not doing the medical checks, he's not doing this or that, I was like, oh, I'm not so sure about this. Like that's a iffy mood. But the fact that he decided to still face the media, and by the way, I don't know if you heard this clip, and you know what, I'll try to share this on our Twitter profile if we're allowed to, but this clip is hilarious because he actually impressed me with his candor and his patience with a very brutal media. He sat down and he was just like, all right, good morning, everyone. And almost instantly, this reporter's like, are you afraid to face your competition? Like, I'm not even joking. Within like 2 seconds,
Of course.
after saying good morning, I was like, good Lord, reporter, relax.
Yeah.
I know that's like your one chance, but just take it easy. Give him like a 5-second breather. So Caleb Williams deciding not to do any of this as a result is a huge surprise, not only because it's the first time, like I said, in combine history where this has happened, but also I think this sets a huge precedent moving forward. And we'll touch more on this later, trust me. But in terms of biggest surprises, this is the biggest confidence boost I've seen from a first overall pick in my life. And it reminds me a lot because it's almost the opposite of, I don't know if you remember this, where it was the Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin the third year.
Yep.
And they asked Robert Griffin III because it's just, the draft season kind of died out like right before the draft. And all of a sudden, all these rumors start flying of like, will the Colts take RG3 over Andrew Luck? And apparently a story leaked that RG3 was like, no, I'm not going to Indianapolis. I refuse to do that. And that became a big thing of like, this player's refusing to go here, as if that hasn't been happening since the 80s with John Elway.
True.
But point being is, this is truly the first big, I think, the step forward in reforming the NFL draft as we know it. I think that was the biggest surprise of like, we all knew Caleb Williams is a maverick, I think is the right word for it.
That's a good word. I like that word.
Okay, we'll roll with that. So, Caleb Williams is Dirk Nowitzki. And so he is moving forward. Oh, come on.
I don't like that one.
That was a good joke.
That was terrible.
That was good.
I liked your wordplay, and then all of a sudden you sullied it. I don't
All
like
right,
it.
fine. He's Jason Kidd. So anyway, I am impressed that this kid has enough guts to lead forward, but at the same time, it's a big gamble, especially with all these reports coming out that his dad is like the next LeVar Ball, trying to leverage every other position into like ownership or something like that, which is just not happening. That's the media loving it. I'm sure his dad is doing that, but that's not going to happen. So it's a very big risk to take. So I was very surprised he took that risk to begin with.
Yeah, it's very interesting because after the combine ended, and obviously after, the media sessions ended, and we knew that he wasn't going to be doing any drills or medical checks or measurements or anything like that, a lot of people obviously raising it on the radio that's just like, does a team want to draft this guy? Like, is he coming off like more, instead of like a maverick, like you sort of laid it out, it's more of like, is it more prima donna? That's like, is this the guy that we want to be the leader of our franchise, under center, being the leader of the huddle? Like, I mean, just all of that stuff is just like, do we want to deal with this? Because it's like, who's to say that he's not going to do all that stuff once he comes to his team? It's like, exactly. I think you painted a very good example, which is like, is this a LeVar Ball, LaMelo Ball, Lonzo Ball, like all of that whole situation? Like, is that happening here? Like, where his dad is controlling stuff, but he's actually fine doing all these things. It's just like, I really don't know what to make of this whole situation. It's very, like you said, unprecedented. We haven't seen this before in combine history, NFL history, whatever you want to lay it out there. And so it's just like, I wonder if now the Chicago Bears obviously being number one on the clock, it's just like, do they sort of take stock into that? That's just like, all right, he's doing all these things. And it's just like, is this the guy that we want to keep, or do we want to keep a guy that's like, maybe we're a little bit hesitant on, but he made some positive strides, that of course being Justin Fields. And it's like, we got to think build around him. And so it's like, maybe we don't need to go with Caleb Williams and let somebody else deal with the headache sort of thing. So yeah, I get that it's very, interesting moves. We'll probably leave it there of Caleb Williams to do these things, but just like, I wonder if it's hurting his stock more than boosting it or keeping it neutral. Like, I mean, it's a very curious decision for sure.
Well, and that's the thing is like, it's such an, if it does end up being an error, which we don't know if it is or not. So I'm not calling it an error.
We don't right now. Yeah.
But just such an unforced error.
True.
Right? Just, okay, yes, I get that's kind of a pain in the ass of like, you gotta sit in there while the Packers, doctors tap at your knee and you're like, you got Jordan Love. What are you checking me out for? Like,
Yeah. There's no chance the
why?
Packers are drafting me. It's
Yeah,
like, why
like,
are you doing
or
it?
even worse, like the Chiefs come in, it's just like, yeah, we want to interview you, and you're like, really? Like, I really had to do this. But you know what, NFL players, very rarely do I pull out this take where I'm like anti-player empowerment, but like, welcome to the real world, man. You got to put with some bullshit you don't want to have to deal with. Like, you got to go to the BS meeting that you know is a BS meeting. But you know what you do? If it's truly like one of those things where you go into a BS meeting, I really hope my bosses don't watch this show. You just kind of figure out a sneaky way to sneak out the phone and just kind of do, like text and scroll Twitter while they're talking. You're like, yep. Those test scores, definitely. Yep. Like, it's one of those things, like, it's just, you kind of have to get used to it. And that's part of the, dangerous isn't the right word, but that's part of the risk of empowering a 21-year-old of just like, well, I don't want to do that work. I don't have to do that work. Okay, fair enough. But you also aren't seeing the long-term implications of what you're doing. So I think I completely understand where Caleb Williams is coming from. But at the same time, this was a massive risk that he really didn't need to take. So it shocked me when I first saw that. That of like, okay, we need to check you out. We just need to check you out. Just make sure you're all right. He's like, no, all right. It's just, and because then you create all this unnecessary drama around you too, where it's like, oh, does he have this, like, because in our LAFB Slack, Chauncey Talese, I believe, was like, oh, what do we think about this? I'm like, he's not hurt. There's no secret injury. My conspiracy theory at the moment is I think he thinks that like someone like the Pittsburgh Steelers would leak out something like, oh, his knee's pretty bad, to try to tank either his trade value with the Bears or his draft stock in general. And I will tell you, before people are like, wow, he's really gone full tinfoil hat. Those Laramie Tunsil pictures were released on draft night for a reason. That's all I'm going to say.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest, storyline that sort of came as a surprise. That's just like, how he decided to go this direction. But I think sort of like, to piggyback off of that one, just one of the big surprises that I sort of noticed over the weekend too was just that a lot of players were opting out of position drills. So
we're going to talk about that. Don't step on it.
But it's just like, I'm wondering if just like this is sort of entering the question. I think you brought this up really briefly too, but just like whether the combine needs further reform as far as like, is this really tailored towards like those high level prospects? It's like, what do they have to prove? It's just like, maybe they don't need to perform it, but it's like for those smaller school prospects and those guys that are like fringe candidates coming back from injuries, maybe that's what more the combine is suited for. So that you see them do everything. You see, get the measurements, you see them run the position drills. Whereas like, for guys like, at the very top of their respective position group, I don't know if they really need to come to the combine. Maybe they're fine just doing their pro day. So it's like maybe they need to institute something different here with the combine as well, where it's just like, they need to make some adjustments. So it's like you get full participation from all the players that are coming out for that weekend. So it's not just the interviews, it's not just the medical checks, but you're actually seeing these guys run the position drills as well. Because, I mean, Tad, we brought it up before on the podcast so many times before, but just like, there's a lot of people that take very big stock from the combine as far as like whether you perform well, whether you don't perform well. So, I mean, like if you're not performing at all, it's just like, how do you view that then? Exactly. So it's just like, yeah, that's definitely probably one of my biggest takeaways as well, to sort of piggyback off the Caleb Williams thing for sure.
Just
so
excuse me for a moment. I had to delete about 3 lines of notes here.
Sorry, but just like, yeah, you bringing that up just sort of like made me want to transition into that for sure. So.
We are both very smart people and have very good points. So anyway, let's get into the player side of things, though. Please tell me you have a player surprise. Let's go on the more happy side of the combine.
Yeah, we could do that. So probably one of my surprise performances was Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State. And so he actually wasn't probably a huge surprise, but I think for him to kill it the way that he did at the combine, I think that came a little bit more surprising for sure, because he was at the Senior Bowl. And so he practiced all of Senior Bowl week and he looked really good during Senior Bowl as well. So I think he was starting to get a lot of people's radars. But then for him to come out at the combine, it's like, this is sort of what I was talking about, where it's just like, this is where, if you could do it on a national spotlight, is like everybody's watching, is like, and you could sort of do the way that do the things that he was able to do during the position drills and his 40 and just all the drills exactly, and just really just do a good job. It's like that really separates yourself, especially in a position group that had Tad that we talked about, where just like outside of Brock Bowers, it's just like, what do you got outside of that? And it's just like, I know I sort of dropped the name of Jatavian Sanders out of Texas a lot of times, but just like, based on the performance
who
that Theo Johnson.
underperformed, by the way.
Exactly. And I think because of him underperforming, that Theo Johnson performing really well, I think that's sort of like shaking up the position group landscape for the tight end position group in this year's draft class, as far as like, what's the debate now as far as who is number 2 after Brock Bowers? Because I mean, you look at Theo Johnson, he is the only tight end in combine history since 1987 to weigh over 255 pounds, run a sub 4.6 40-yard dash, and post a vertical over 39 inches. So he had a 4.5740. He weighed at 259 pounds, and he had a 39.5 inch vertical. So, I mean, those are fantastic numbers that you want from a tight end, let alone.
So what you're saying is he's Godzilla.
It's sort of looking that way. And I mean, just he went through the position skills and position drills. Excuse me. He showcased good blocking skills, good pass catching skills as well. And the pass catching was really important to see, Tad, because if you look at his last season at Penn State, he didn't have the best numbers. They used him more as a blocker. They used him as a versatile, like, H-back role, very similar to Kyle Juszczyk in the Niners offense. And so it's just like he wasn't able to rack up those receiving numbers that, a Brock Bowers was able to rack up, or like, who's the guy, Colorado State's tight end that we both like, who's with Arizona right now?
Oh, how dare you?
I'm sorry.
Trey McBride.
Trey McBride, yes, very good. Yeah, Trey McBride. He was able to rack
Woo,
up a lot of numbers
that was
with Colorado State.
On-time Ted name we call right there.
Not bad. Way to pull it out there.
Oh,
so, I mean, like, it's not anything like that either, where it's just like they asked him to be the sole purpose of their offense. So it's like he was used all over all over the field. He was lined up all over the place, but just unfortunately, he didn't rack up those numbers, unfortunately, that probably a lot of scouts and a lot of people that are looking to draft this guy were looking for, as far as like, well, the production isn't there. Why are we going to take a chance on this guy? But then, yeah, he was able to come out, really showcase his skills at the combine. He looks, just very much like he's a gifted receiver. I think that's for sure. He's got those athletic receiving traits. They just didn't use it to its full extent at Penn State. He needs to work on the blocking for sure once he gets to the next level, but that could easily be coached up. But just, yeah, the combine performance that Theo Johnson was able to put together, like I said, I think that sparks a debate as far as who's going after Brock Bowers at number 2, and maybe Theo Johnson's that guy now.
So our YouTube audience saw me make an face because, yes, I know they have Isaiah Likely, and I know Isaiah Likely look good.
He does.
But what was the key to Trey McBride looking good in Arizona was the fact they got to grow. Like you said, like he shows a lot of promise, but you have to give him at least a year or two to grow a little bit. And he was able to do that behind Zach Ertz before the Cardinals gracefully cut him, which he asked for, by the way, before people are like gracefully cut him. What if Theo went to Baltimore? He is the eventual successor to Mark Andrews.
Could be. With the way that the Baltimore Ravens draft tight ends, it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's because Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. I know people are being like, he's 27. You forget a lot of these NFL people, like the second you hit 28, are like, yeah, no, you're dead to me. And
he's also dealt with a lot of injuries. So, yeah, Philadelphia taking a chance on it, because outside of Goddard, I know when he was hurt, they didn't really have much else options as far as behind him.
Their offense fell apart.
Exactly. So, yeah, Theo Johnson would be a good fit in Philadelphia as well. But just, yeah, I think the right team that could draft him and not start him right away, I think he'd be a receiving threat right away, but just at the blocking aspect to become an all-around tight end, that's still going to come with time. So, yeah, if he could come to a place, really develop behind a starting tight end, I think, yeah, that could really flourish his career for sure. So that was my surprise for the combine for sure.
I would say he's likely to replace Isaiah Likely's production. Nailed it.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. And speaking of not liking that at all, let's get to some, terrible performances.
All right, right back into the negative. Let's dive right in there, head first.
So who do you think, Tad, just didn't have the best combine over the weekend here?
Oh, I'll tell you who didn't have the best combine of the weekend. It's the combine.
All right, I can see why you're saying, like, stepping on some toes here for sure. But,
yeah, so I'm about to bring up a bunch of points you brought up, but okay, so Caleb Williams made all the headlines, right? For he's the first quarterback, first prospect to decline medical examinations, but there are a lot of players that also didn't participate that didn't make the headline. So let's talk about some of those. First off, I'm surprised this wasn't a bigger deal. Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't even show up.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
He didn't even go to the press.
Yeah.
He just didn't go. And by the way, I need to preface this with, I'm not criticizing any of these players. I'm not saying like how dare they don't do this. It's a risky move on their part. I will acknowledge the risk in it, but I'm not saying it's a bad move. And here's why, because I don't know. This level of non-participation has never happened before in combine history. So I don't know if it's a bad move or not. So Marvin Harrison Jr. was just basically like, nah, I'm all right. Like, just show up in my pro day, I'll show you. It's like, all right. And then Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, the receiver and quarterback and receiver, respectively, out of LSU. To their credit, they did show up. They did answer press questions. They didn't even do the weigh-in.
Yeah.
They didn't even weigh in. That's easy. Step on a scale, man. It's one step.
I know.
Even that, they're like, no, I'm all right. It's just like, I think we're reaching a point in combine history where exactly like what you said, that's why I was like, like you're killing a whole segment of mine, where the combine is turning into a more events reminiscent of the Senior Bowl. Where, yes, you'll have a big name or two in the Senior Bowl, Amani Bailey, where, that guy is good. We know he's good. He just wants to like kind of further prove it. It's kind of like, think of Bo Nix if he actually played more than a drive in that game. Where like, yes, we all know Bo Nix is going to be one of the top quarterbacks, but he has the chance to propel himself forward ahead of a couple guys. That's fine. And no one has any problem with the Senior Bowl that way. I think that's what the combine's quickly turning into, where the top prospects, like you said, and this is why I'm not saying this is, I'm saying this is as a negative of any of these players. I totally understand why. If I'm Caleb Williams, I'm like, look, all the talk, none of the talk is, do you take Caleb Williams number 1 overall? All the talk is, who takes Caleb Williams number 1 overall?
Yeah.
Why the hell would I risk anything? Like, yeah, maybe I have like a little like fracture in my knee that I don't know about, and all of a sudden you find it and I lose $20 million because I slipped number 4. Why would I do that? So no, I don't blame the players whatsoever, but my God, the combine has got to figure this shit out, because the current system is just not adapting to this new generation of look out for me first.
Yeah.
This is something that, the NFL, the NBA is dealing with. Really, all major sport leagues are dealing with. They're not used to the players being like, no, I'm not going to give up my body for that logo on my chest. I don't care. No, I'm looking out for number 1. I'm looking out for me, which is good in my opinion. And of course, we're seeing that in the NCAA right now of like the whole landscape is shifting because the players are like, yeah, no, fuck school pride. I don't care. Yeah, our Cornhuskers, you're not going to start me? Nittany Lions? I'm a starter? Okay, yeah, I'm going to go to Pennsylvania. See ya. Like, good. Look out for yourself. Take care of yourself. And this is the first time we're seeing this in pro football. So the combine is a real loser, and I'd be shocked if we didn't see some type of the beginnings. I'm not saying like next year's combine is going to be radically different, but I think we're going to start seeing this, beginning of changes with the combine on top of that. And look, I haven't talked about a player yet, so let's just talk about, a player loser. This one hurt because I really like this guy, Cameron Kitchens.
Yeah.
I love him. I love him as a player. I probably love him as a person if I ever met him. But Cameron Kitchens, the safety out of Miami. This is a very weak safety class. Really, this is probably the weakest draft position in this year's class. But he was solely set as number 1, and he was solely set to solidify himself as number 1, and he blew it.
It's true.
He blew it so bad. He ran a 4.65 40-yard dash time. He did not look good in any of the agility drills. He finished last in broad jump among safeties. And I learned this while I was doing research on just how bad he was. Apparently there's some bullshit like athletic skill that, these teams use, which of course, and this is exactly why all these players are quitting the combine, because it's like, who knew this athletic scale was even out there judging me? He rated a 2 out of 10 on that athletic skill.
Ooh, that's not good.
It's very, very not good. Very not good. And about, 20% of my 8th grade is right there. But point being is this guy had the chance to solidify himself as the top safety. And really, if a team needed a safety and they were just like, hey, we'll reach for this guy a little bit, maybe solidify himself as a late first rounder. He honestly, he went into the combine as a solid second rounder. Kitchens, solid second rounder. I would 100% agree with you. I think he's going to be a 3rd or 4th rounder now. So Kitchens, unfortunately, unless he does like extremely well as pro day, unless he kills it his 40 time as pro day, I think that dude just cost himself about $1 million, which really sucks to say, but he cost himself this weekend.
And I think that's the key thing that you brought up, where it's like if you're in a position group where there's just a lot of murkiness, and you just don't know who the clear number one is, this is where you really need to set yourself apart.
Yeah.
And for you to sort of not take advantage of that and really just, establish yourself as like, okay, you're not sure who the best safety is. I'm going to go out and prove it. I am the best safety in this year's draft class. And just unfortunately, I 100% agree with you. He just didn't look all that great. The position drills, the slow 40 time didn't help. I'm not going to argue too much about the 40 time. Safeties are a little bit more about coverage. You don't need to have such killer speed. But just when you're not looking good at the coverage skills, in the position drills, that's where then it hurts you, right? Because
he literally tripped over his own feet at one point. Yeah. I'm like, oh man, and that is literally the reaction I had. So I recorded it because I watched Dune 2 this weekend. Which, by the way, we'll talk about this player, but a certain player had an incredible 40 time. I walked out of Dune 2 with all these texts of like, oh my god, this player. I'm like, what the hell do you do? But anyway, point being is, so I'm sitting on my couch watching this recording of the safety drills, and he tripped. He literally, it was the drill we talked about during our preview episode with the football where they go left to right, and he tripped over his own left foot. And I literally was sitting on my couch and just go, oh! It was like when your quarterback throws an interception, you're just like, damn it.
Yeah. So it's very critical, like in a situation like he's in, to really separate yourself. And unfortunately, he separated himself in a bad way. So yeah, he definitely has slid down the position rankings at the safety class there. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, maybe he could kill it as pro day and sort of, recuperate some of the losses that he sort of suffered here at the combine. But yeah, he's got a big hill to climb now for sure as he gets to his pro day. For me, I brought up this guy as a potential, late first round guy, possibly, second round guy. A lot of people are projecting the same thing, but after his combine performance, I think very similarly to like you're talking about with Kitchens here out of Miami, just that I think he's going to slide down and go a little further here. Troy Franklin, the wide receiver out of Oregon.
Do you remember back in August when I said this guy had the potential to maybe be the first receiver off the board?
I do remember this. I don't remember which week it was. I think it was like early in the college football season.
I think it was after the first week of college football.
Yeah, and you texted me. You're like, watch out. I'm going to get ready to talk a lot about Troy Franklin.
I did exactly that.
Unfortunately, buddy, we're going to be talking about him in a bad sense.
He's going to be, he could be a 5th round pick at this point.
It's close to it. Because I think the problem is just like this wide receiver class is very deep. So you got a lot of good guys at the top. You got a lot of good guys in the middle, and you can get a lot of good guys at the very end too. And just unfortunately, this is also a critical situation where it's like you really need to make sure you're stepping up your skills to really give scouts something to think about. That's like, well, we really like Franklin, but then it's like, well, Keon Coleman did this better. It's like Malachi Corley did this better. It's like Xavier Worthy clearly is the fastest guy for the combine, which we'll get to probably a little bit later here. But just like, you really need to set yourself apart if you're in a class where like Kitchens is just like, you have no clear shot as far as who's the number one guy, or in a situation where it's like, you know who the number one guy is, you know who some of the other top guys are. It's like, you really need to define yourself and make sure you're setting yourself apart from all of that murkiness as well. And just unfortunately, he just couldn't keep up with those other top prospects. Like, I mean, his speed in football context at the combine just didn't match his 40 time. He posted a very good 40 time, reasonable 4.41, and I think it was the 10th fastest out of all wide receivers, if I remember correctly there. But just here's the big thing. He's undersized. He's very much in that Devontae Smith realm where he came in at the combine at 176 pounds. Like that's a little scary to me.
All right. Well, real quick. Do you know what his school weight was?
Honestly, it's probably a little bit higher than that. I want to say like maybe 182.
So what was his combine weight again?
His combine weight was 176.
176. And you're saying 182?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just slightly off. The school weight was 11 pounds heavier.
Oh my God.
11 pounds. That may be the biggest drop. That may be the
187.
I know we say this a lot on the podcast, like don't trust those school measurements. That may be the best example I've ever seen of like do not trust those school measurements.
Yeah, it's so hard to do that. And I mean, just like overall in the position drills, he just looked very slow out the gate. He just didn't he went through the gauntlet drill. He was like running all over the place. He was double catching a lot of balls.
Wasn't fluid.
Yeah, exactly. He just didn't look comfortable out there. And I mean, I can understand that. You're there for an entire week. You're not getting the best sleep either. It's just like, it's a lot new to you, but just like, still, he did not look as great as probably a lot of people expected it to. He did rebound later. He did look a little bit better in some of the other position roles as they went further along in the day. But just overall, it just looked very just, concerning. I think that's probably the best word, especially with a guy, like I said, we're sort of like fringe first round talent. But here it's just like with that performance that he put up, it's just like hard to really just see whether, like, are we trusting the guy on tape or are we trusting the guy that we see on the combine more recently? So that's the big thing there. But just, yeah, there's a lot to like with him. I think he's still got a lot of potential. And I think, once again, very similar with Kitchens, is like his pro day can really sort of like, help alleviate some of the issues that we saw during the combine. And I mean, the tape, he looks really good on tape as well. Like, I mean, he's a great route runner. He's really able to make defensive backs that he's going against really second guess themselves as far as where he's going on the field, get open a lot. He's showing that great elite speed. So, I mean, I think he could be a really good option at the next level. But just when we were considering him as a first round talent, he is definitely not going to be first round talent now after that performance at the combine.
Absolutely not. I think that's God, this sounds mean, but I think that's a perfect loser. Because like what you said is this guy had all the promise in the world. I honestly had him top 15 going into the season, and he just slowly kind of started falling back. And, I want to make this very clear. This is not our personal opinions of like, is he going to be a bad receiver? We're not saying that.
No.
Our whole job is predicting what we're analyzing analysts. Essentially,
True.
Is like the NFL scouts, what are their takeaways from this weekend? And I truly believe that, yes, he did just go from a borderline, like you say, once he was a borderline first round prospect. I think he lost that probably by November, December. He was borderline second round going into the combine. Hence why I say fifth round, because there's still a lot of promise there. But at the same time, he could be. I bring this guy up a lot on the draft because I knew, despite his poor testing, despite his poor, measurables, I knew this guy was going to be good just from the way he played. It's Donovan Peoples-Jones. People forget about him. He was a 6th round pick by the Cleveland Browns because he was this big, and tell me this doesn't sound familiar, he was a very good physical receiver who just didn't quite have it worked out yet. You could just tell he needed a lot of refinement, and now all of a sudden he's the number 2 receiver on the Cleveland Browns. They had a goddamn quarterback who would be one of the best teams in the NFL today. So point being is, we're not saying this is the nail in the coffin for his NFL career. We're just saying this might be the nail in the coffin for him going day 1 or day 2.
Yeah, I still think he's still got potential to be a day 2 pick. I think 5th round's a little extreme for me. I'm thinking more he probably slid himself to mid 3rd round. That's where I'm sort of slating him right now. Because I still like the potential. Like I said, the speed is really good. His route running is really good too. And just like I said, maybe just the being at the combine just feels a little bit, unfamiliar settings. Maybe that threw him off a little bit too. Because like I said, he did get better as the day went on. But just, yeah, I think just where we're sort of considering him as a fringe first round, second round pick, yeah, I think he sort of slid his way now into the 3rd round for sure, at least. So, but yeah, let's sort of close this out on a happy note here. Let's get to some winners here. Let's get to some good ones here because I have a really big pick that I think a lot of people have been talking about. So I'm going to save mine, but I mean, just he looks sensational. But let's hear your winner first.
All right. Well, okay. This is not my pick, but we have to acknowledge it because people are going to yell at us if we don't. Yes, we know Xavier Worthy is fast as fuck. No, I don't know where that came from. No, I don't.
It's true.
That was so weird. It's like, okay, so I'll give our listeners a very quick preview. So Saturday morning, I wake up. I'm very excited. I'm about to see Dune 2, a movie I've been prepping for all year. I'm very excited for this movie.
Sure.
Around 3 o'clock, I start getting ready for this movie. Around 4 o'clock, I walk into this movie. Around, I don't know, it's about a 3-hour movie. 7:30, 8 o'clock, I walk out. What?
Did you get the popcorn bucket?
No, I didn't get the popcorn bucket. How rich do you think I am? That thing costs like $40.
Especially as much as you love Dune, I figured you'd get the bucket. I don't know.
No, I'm not going to get the bucket. Plus, I don't know if you saw the Twitter videos, but apparently the whole problem is with like the teeth going in is like when you try to scoop out the popcorn.
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen it. I've seen how terrible it is, but just I thought
I value my damn popcorn. If I'm going to buy a bucket of popcorn at a movie theater, I'm going to get my money's worth.
Yeah, that's fair. I get you.
Those Sour Patch Kids are so worth it. But anyway, point being is I walk out of Dune about 3.5 hours later. Very happy, by the way. Great movie. Go see it if you haven't. And all of a sudden, I'm not even joking. I had like 7 to 9 mixed text messages. One was my mother wondering why I didn't pick up the phone when she called me on a Saturday night. Well, I have things to do on a Saturday night. The other was all the other ones. That was the only one that was not related to this. All the other ones were like, oh my God, Xavier Worthy. And I, honest to God, this is where my mind went at first. I was like, oh, he just blew out his knee. I'm like, that poor kid. Like, this is the first like catastrophic combine injury. My mind went to this with the Caleb Williams thing. Combine's dead. I was like, combine's dead. It's never going to happen again. And all of a sudden, I saw the motherfucker ran up 4.22, 4.21. What was it?
4.21. Mm-hmm.
Oh, dear God. The hell did that come from?
The new record. Mm-hmm.
My God. And he had the 4th highest vertical among wide receivers. That man just solidified himself as a first rounder. Early first rounder? Absolutely not. That is all clickbait for you to be like, oh my God, is Xavier Worthy now top 15? No, he's not top 15. I'd be shocked if he went top 15. But interesting fit that I've seen now ever since his combine performance, Xavier Worthy to the Buffalo Bills. That's something to keep your eye on. So yes, obviously Xavier Worthy is a very obvious draft combine winner. Yes, we acknowledge him. So getting into the real good stuff though, how about this? And look, Mer, I do appreciate your analysis. I do. Very rarely do I shake it off, but this is truly a guy I was like, okay, you're just going for the hot name, whatever. Quinyon Mitchell, that dude's fucking legit.
Yeah, you start learning how to say his name too.
Quinyon Mitchell. I almost said Quinyon.
Quinyon, yeah.
I've been practicing that all day. Quinyon Mitchell.
Quinyon Mitchell. Yeah.
The corner out of Toledo.
Yeah.
Holy shit. This kid's gonna be good.
And actually, really quick, Tad, before you get into him, in our combine preview episode, I talked about Kool-Aid McKinstry having the most pressure on him. He got hurt, so he didn't even participate. This just accentuated all the other corners to have really good days, including Quinyon Mitchell.
Like I said, I thought you were going for the hot name because he had a really good Senior Bowl. And I was like, all right, fine, we'll ride the hot. Not that we would ever do this, but I was like, all right, fine, we'll ride the hot name for, some SEO, advantage. Oh my God, he is so good. And this is, I will say, as someone who is regularly shit on the combine, this is where the combine really pays off. And kind of like why we were talking, okay, maybe the combine is about to, have some changes and stuff, but the combine's never going to go away. This is why I compare it to the Senior Bowl because, yes, all right, great. You have a great Senior Bowl. Plenty of people have great Senior Bowls. Quinyon Mitchell had an amazing combine. You look at, so first off, and this was shocking, he was listed as 6 foot, 195 pounds at Toledo. Do you want to know what he weighed in at the combine?
I think probably 201 and probably still at the 6 foot part.
6 foot, 195 pounds.
95. Okay. All right.
Toledo is a very honest athletic department.
Toledo's honest. Yes.
I respect you, Toledo. So, the funny thing is, in our preview episode that you mentioned, I said that Nate Wiggins was going to kill at the combine, which he did, to be fair. He had a very impressive good combine. But here's the difference is everyone's expecting Nate Wiggins to have a good combine.
That is true. Mm-hmm.
No one was really expecting that from Mitchell. And Mitchell absolutely blew him out of the water. So he had a 40 time of 4.33, which at his position was the 3rd best time. Oh, no, hold on. Sorry. No, hold on. I made a mistake. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. That wasn't his position. It was the 3rd best time of all positions at the combine. A 4.33, which first off shows how freaking athletic this entire draft class is.
Very true.
4.33 from a guy from Toledo? That's unheard of. And then you look at it again, and not that I was saying that your predictions or your analysis is wrong, but I just thought it was kind of like, okay, talk this guy up so, we can ride the hype on him coming out of Senior Bowl week. You absolutely nailed his analysis, dude. You nailed it. It's his zone coverage is absolutely phenomenal. His off-man coverage is the best in this year's draft. And here's my favorite part. So there are a couple YouTube channels that, I'm sure you and I both use, not as our primary sources of, draft analysis, but just to help us out, form an opinion. And both of these draft channels said the same thing. Now, granted, these videos were posted a month ago, and the other one was posted 3 months ago. And both of them said the same thing, which is hilarious, which was his transition speed is a concern. His speed is a concern.
Interesting.
I was literally laughing out loud while I was doing this research. That's out. Yeah. And I will plant my flag in this right now. Quinyon Mitchell. See, I nailed it that time.
There you go.
Just cemented himself as the number 1 corner in this year's draft. And there's no way he falls beyond number 14 past the New Orleans Saints, especially given all these Marshawn Lattimore rumors going around. There's no way he falls past that. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be top 10 because there's not a whole lot of need for corner as like an immediate need in that top 10, but I think he will be the first corner off the board at number 14 to the New Orleans Saints, should they stay in that spot.
No, I like it. I remember when we did our season preview show for the college football season, I brought up this guy as a guy to sort of keep an eye on as far as a small school prospect. So I've been writing him as far as like, all season long, as far as like this guy is going to blow up.
This is all time bragging rights by you.
Yeah,
this guy is so good.
I'm really impressed with just everything that he's been doing. He's just consistently, just continued to showcase that's like, even though I went to a small school, I can hang with the big boys. And it's like, he's clearly proven it time and time again at the Senior Bowl, all season long, and now at the Combine. I mean, just like, I don't doubt that he could be in play for the first round, for the first defensive back taken off the board. I can't guarantee for sure, because like we talked about, this is the same conversation that we had before. Same thing with Devin Witherspoon and Chris Gonzalez. Depending on who's available there, they may prefer a different quarter over Quinyon Mitchell. But I 100% agree with you. That's like, he is in that conversation to be the first one off the board, but I can't guarantee for sure that he will be.
I think that if Terrion Arnold is taken before him, I think that's big school bias. And I think that's probably the first time I've ever used that term on this podcast. But one thing I want to point out that you kind of pointed out was, because again, it was funny because I was like, okay, Quinyon Mitchell, that sounds familiar. And I looked him up. I'm like, okay, he's in our description for the Senior Bowl recap. I'm like, I sure shit didn't talk about him. So I was like, damn it, Amir talked about him. So I'm like, all right, I have to go back and watch the episode. But one point that you brought up in our recap episode that was so on point was a big, not complaints, but kind of point that scouts were looking out for is, can you succeed in man-to-man coverage? He proved that in the Senior Bowl. Yes, I can. And then, like I said, is the next big concern was, do you have that transitional speed of like when you need transition deep coverage on a whim? Can you do that? Well, he just proved that in the Combine. So he proved one, huge doubt wrong at the Senior Bowl. He proved another huge doubt wrong at the Combine. I mean, this dude's just winning all over the place. Like, I could not be happier. Like, if we have a Toledo Rocket go in the top 10 of the NFL draft, I will be so happy. Like, this will be awesome. And again, I picked Nate Wiggins as my biggest winner going into this Combine.
And he had a great Combine too.
And he did have a good Combine. But again, that's kind of the thing, is like, he was expected to have a good Combine. No one saw this from Mitchell. He absolutely blew it up. I am so proud of this kid. I can't wait to see where he goes. God, please don't let it be the Texans.
I don't think he'll fall all the way to the Texans. I think he's definitely cemented himself as a top 15 pick for sure. Top 10 would be, I think, really just depends on how his pro day goes. But like I said, I think just the value of a defensive back in this year's draft class is just a little bit lower, I'd say, for top 10. But we'll get into all that once we get to our second mock draft for sure, after free agency sort of gets through there with the first wave going through. So yeah, we'll definitely address that later. But I want to talk about my winner here. He's sort of been a consensus winner by a lot of media outlets for sure, but he absolutely killed it. Like, I mean, he probably had one of the best combines over the weekend, and that is Branden, Fiske, the defensive tackle out of Florida State. So, Tad, I don't know if you watched him doing his position drills. I don't know if you watched him doing his 40, but just I
watched it. I'm scared.
Amazing. Like, everything that you're saying
about do you think I checked under my bed for last night?
Absolutely a monster. Like, I mean, just, everything that you were saying about Quinyon Mitchell sort of just like cementing himself as being like one of the top defensive backs in the defensive back class this year. Like, Branden Fiske, very much, he had a very good Senior Bowl as well. And then just, he was able to follow it up with a very, very good combine. Like, I mean, I was watching every position drill. I was just like, it seemed like he ran this position drill like 100 times before he had to do it on national TV. Like, I mean, he just looked that smooth, that polished. Like, I mean, just the scouts were probably drooling over this guy. That's like, we need to rank this guy higher because somebody's going to take him and they're going to get an absolute steal when they get him in the second round. Potentially with the performance that he put, Tad, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes at the end of the first. Like, I mean, he looked really good.
He's the perfect candidate to go at the end of the first. Sorry to interrupt you because of this. And look, I know in the past I've shit all over the Combine. And yes, I do think the Combine needs a little bit of retooling. But this is where the Combine comes in handy because you see this all the time, especially with the Bills. Notice how the Bills do this a lot, where with guys like, I know they didn't originally draft him, but Star Ludalele. Why did I pick that name? Yeah, of all names. But Dalton Kincaid is a better recent example of that, where they're just like, look, these guys are raw athletes. They are just athletic as shit, and we can, if with good coaching, we can get these guys there. It will take some time, but we can get these guys there. And I think that's where the mistake they made with Von Miller is that they were like, all right, Von Miller is a freak athlete. He's also 35 years old. He's pretty set in his ways.
It's true.
And that's why Von Miller had like 4 tackles for Buffalo this year.
If that's accurate, yeah, probably.
Did you guys see that stat where Von Miller got paid like $10 million per tackle he made for the
something
Bills?
like that? Yeah, I remember that. It's ridiculous.
But bottom line being is, I think they have the Bills, and you see this with the Eagles as well. I know the Kobe Dean pick hasn't really worked out, but really everything else has worked out pretty well. Just like, let's just draft these freak college athletes and we'll figure it out later. I mean, look at Jalen Carter. I mean, the Eagles were willing to take a risk on him, even though we've had plenty of discussion about that. Of like, if you just draft these freak college athletes, chances are you're going to do well. And that's why a lot of these teams that say, Ravens, that, stay on the back end of this first round year in, year out, it's because they draft these freak athletes with very little character concerns who they can coach up to be exactly who they need to be in the system.
100%. Because you look at the numbers that he put up, Tad, as among defensive tackles, 40-yard dash time of 4.78 seconds.
That's goddamn
and a vertical jump of 33.5 inches. Broad jump of 9'9" at the combine. Right. Led all defensive tackles with all of those numbers. His 4.37 second short shuttle. Sorry, it's a lot of what that's
No,
there.
You're good. Short shuttle is dangerous.
A mark better than Aaron Donald's 4.39 that he set 10 years ago. So, I mean, if you're in the same conversation as Aaron Donald, that's saying something. That is 100% saying something for sure.
I'm not even a quarterback. I'm getting no sleep tonight.
Exactly. It's crazy. But just like I said, through the position drills, I mean, he just looked so smooth. It looked like he ran that drill like he could do it in his sleep. It looked just so easy for him. Very polished, very smooth. I mean, he was a menace all practice week. During the Senior Bowl game itself, too, Tad, he had 0.5 sacks. He had 1.5 tackles for loss, a quarterback hurry. So, I mean, he was performing all practice week as well as in the game itself. I mean, just the guy is just a relentless beast. And I think he really can improve a team because, I mean, heading into the combine, I think it was probably like a fringe top 50 player, like somewhere in that 40 to 50 range. I think with the combine, though, top 25.
You know who he reminds me of is Taven Bryan. Do you remember him?
Taven Bryan, I do remember Taven.
Taven Bryan was a defensive tackle out of Florida who rose very quickly for the same reasons of like, yes, this guy's a raw athlete. I think the Jaguars quickly learned from this mistake of like, you can't just draft a guy because he's raw. You got to make sure he's a fit in your system. But regardless, he's an example of if you show off your raw athleticness, what's the word?
Athleticism, probably.
Thank you. Athleticism. Athleticness. 10:30 my time. That's the excuse. Athleticism, thank you. If you show off your raw athleticism, that's the whole point of pro days. That's the whole point of the combine, is just to look the best in front of these guys. And Scouts will fall for it, but also it's not always falling for it. Sometimes you do find the diamond in the rough. And yeah, this could be that exactly because, like you said, is Matabuko.
Matabuke.
Damn it! All right, so they franchise tag him, right? That's what you were saying earlier?
It did, yeah.
Means they got him for one more year. What if they take him at the end of the first round this year? And all of a sudden, when he walks off for a big payday with the New York Giants next year, they're not panicked because all of a sudden Baltimore's got a backup plan ready. That is what makes these good teams good.
Is very true. So, yeah, I think top 25 probably. I've got to backtrack a little bit. That one, that's a little bit too extreme, I think.
Shock me.
100%.
I'm with you. I'm not backing up that take. Nope.
Okay, all right.
I'm not backing up the take. I'm not backing up the take.
100%. I'm still very much in that boat that I think he could be a fringe first rounder. Now, 100% he'll be one of the first players taken at the top of round 2 in case he doesn't go in the first round. Because, yeah, he looks sensational, and I very much think he was definitely one of the overall winners after the combine weekend was done.
Okay, this is a weird comparison because then obviously no way are they similar playing style wise. He's a Joey Porter of this year's draft. Because think about it, we were like Joey Porter could go 15 and he ended up going top of the second and it didn't shock either one of us. I was like, that's true. Joey Porter's there at the top of the second, but he's going to go pretty soon. Yeah. And I think, what was he, like the third or fourth pick of the second round?
If I remember correctly, yeah, I think it was the second or third, yeah.
Yeah, so like he's that guy where it's like he can go mid first, he will go early second, but there's no way he slides any further than that.
Definitely not. I think he just showcased himself so well that just like, yeah, scouts are going to be like, if we don't get this guy at the top of the second or end of the first, somebody else is going to take him, but we're going to miss out for sure. So fun combine weekend, Tad. Like, I mean, I still have to rewatch some of the position drills as well. I didn't get to dive into everything that I wanted to because there's just too much to get into for sure. And unfortunately, we do have 9 to 5 jobs, so we can't watch it live, unfortunately. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely got all that recorded. So we still have you covered with all of the analysis when it comes to the draft. And so yeah, we're gonna be rewatching all of that, watching tape for all these prospects. But I mean, guys, you see their ticker coming right
How
down
do you
below.
lose
Follow
the
us
other
on all of
day?
our social media handles. You got us on Twitter. You got me at UpTheSide23, Tad at Tad the Side 94. Got show handle at the Side Guys, and of course on Instagram at the Side Guys. But hit us up. Let us know who you want us to dive into. It's like, whoever you're sort of a fan of. If you're a fan of the Houston Texans, if you're a fan of the
How
Cincinnati
dare you?
Bengals, if you're a
Nope.
fan of the Atlanta Falcons, whoever
All
you're a
right.
fan of, if you're like, okay, we're picking around here, who do you think are some good prospects here? What do you think our position of needs are? We will take care of that for you. Just hit us up with your questions. Who do you want us to dive into? What do you think your team needs? Like, I mean, we're here to answer all of that. Yes, we'll try to get through as much as we can during the time leading up to the draft, but unfortunately, we cover as much as we can. We can't cover everything as much as we'd like to. So this is where you interacting with us will let us know, hey, let's make sure we go in this direction. Or even once the podcast is over, me and Tad are watching tape constantly now that we're in this draft season here. So we will make sure to highlight the guys that you want us to highlight. So please interact with us. Let us know who you want us to scout for you, to give you some answers, clarify any sort of questions that you may have. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe so you're always up to date with our podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Always up to date with our YouTube videos as well. And guys, please subscribe and do all the follows for our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Chargers and the Rams at the professional level, and the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level. A lot of draft stuff happening with them. We obviously got, UCLA making a lot of changes with their coaching staff. Spring games should be coming right around the corner as well. So I mean, just like there's a lot of things happening in LA sports. Get all of your information from LAFB Network. They got a lot of great people there working to give you up-to-the-date information with all 4 of those LA-based football teams. But guys, to everybody who's already, subscribed to our podcast, interacting with us on social media, subscribe to YouTube. I mean, just any way and anything you're doing to support the podcast, we cannot thank you enough.
And this is going to come off a little bit like a PSA. Promise it's not. But like Amir said, we both work 9 to 5 jobs. Here's where my actually 8 to 4:45 job pays off is I'm not working next week.
There you go.
And my God, the amount of, and you can ask Amir, I swear to God, the story is completely true, was that last year or 2 years ago? I had a surprise snow day that turned into like 4 days off work.
Last year, I think, yeah.
Was that last year? And I scouted every single player at the NFL Senior Bowl. And like truly, I scouted all of them. I watched all of their tape. I don't care what school they went to. And you know what? That is my damn goal for this year's spring break. I'm going to be on spring break starting this Friday. Will I start watching tape this Friday? No. I need 2 days to recover. But starting this Sunday, you can bet I am going to spend way too much time playing on my couch, watching tape, preparing our ultimate big board, which we will share not all of it with you. I think that would take about 6 episodes, but we have a lot more draft info headed your way as soon as free agency is figured out as well, because my God, that is going to shake things up a lot. Is Justin Fields still going to be on the Bears by this time next week? We don't know. So be sure to keep tuning in because we have a lot coming up with free agency. We have a ton more coming up with the draft. And hey, the game shows, the trivia, show we did just a couple of weeks ago, that's not dead yet. And that is definitely going to pick up post-draft as well. So if that was more of your cup of tea, that's all on the way more. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And please stay safe, everyone.